Welcome to Linda's Corner. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about opening our minds and considering new perspectives about life. I'm delighted to welcome special guest D. Neil Elliott. Neil is the author of A Higher Road, Cleanse Your Consciousness to Transcend the Ego and Ascend Spiritually, a 7-step process to inner peace, joy, love, abundance, and prosperity. You can reach Neil and learn more about his book at his website, dneilelliott.com, and I'll include a link in the description. Welcome, Neil. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Oh, I am excited and thrilled to be here. So thank you so much.
Wonderful. And today we're going to be talking about how we have this facade, and maybe not everybody knows it's a facade. Maybe we don't even know it's a facade of just things going amazing. And then the true story, or the rest of the story, is that inside we're kind of a mess and things are not as they appear. And I know for you, anyone who is looking at you would think, man, this guy has got it all together. He's got a great family, a successful career, and man, things are awesome. And that wasn't the way that you were feeling inside. Would you mind sharing your story? What was really going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and a facade is a good way to put it. A way that I typically describe it as either a facade or we're good actors in our life. So we always put our best foot forward. We always present to family, friends, clients, the best of ourselves to operate and function well in the external world. And so what was going on for me? So I'll talk about myself. So what happened to me? So I was born in 1960. And in my 30s, so in the 90s, I was reading spiritual self-help books to try and change how I thought about things. Trying to improve myself. All the books that you perhaps read or are familiar with, books by Wayne Dyer, Carolyn Myss, those kinds of books, Napoleon Hill. And I couldn't really shift how I thought. I left employment in 2000 and entered into consulting. And as a consultant, you work hard. You're always trying to put your best foot forward to your client. You're always trying to serve your client. But you work all the time. At least I did. If you're not working or you're sick or it's a stat holiday, you don't get paid. So you just work. And what happened is I had this depression creep in really slowly over time. And I got to this point in 2014 or so. I recognized that I was deeply depressed and felt like, what's the point of life? I'm miserable. I'm working hard. I'm not getting ahead. And, there's got to be something more to this. And so I kind of went back to some new self-help books, spiritual books. And I was reading them and, they all offered these great processes and things. I just couldn't make the shift. And we had our house on the market for 7 years and it hadn't sold, finally sold. My wife jumped on a plane to go to Toronto, Ontario, Canada to visit family, her brother and his children. And I sat down on a kitchen table and crafted a suicide note. And I was planning it so that my wife would be financially secure. And I wanted to do it. And I'm a professional engineer. And I have an MBA, and I've been working, in the professional world, the hydroelectric industry, for over 30 years. And I just got to this point where, there wasn't any point for me. There wasn't any point, but I had this. I'm agnostic. I'm not religious, but I had this nagging doubt that, my belief or my understanding was, if you did bad things, you go to hell, and if you do good things, you go to heaven. And I had this nagging doubt. That was stopping me from preventing suicide, but I was still going to go through with it. I thought, there's no point in this. I was miserable. I had this great facade. No one in my family knew I was in this state. And I think this is the case probably for a lot of people that are depressed and they hide it. And so I sat down to craft this suicide note. I had just read a book by a woman that had a near-death experience, and she had suffered from this aggressive cancer over a 4-year period. She was down to 75 pounds. She couldn't keep her head up. She was on oxygen 24 hours a day, and she fell into a coma. They rushed her to a hospital. It's in Hong Kong. They rushed her to a hospital. The admitting physician said told her husband she wouldn't make it through the night. She woke up 24 hours later, declared that she would be okay. 24 hours or 2 weeks after that, they couldn't find a trace of cancer in her body. And this is all medically documented in the medical system. And the doctors can't explain it, of course, but it happened. And she came back she had this experience, this near-death experience in that 24 hours, where she described consciousness in a way which stretched my imagination of what consciousness was. And she came back with messages. We're not judged after we die, no matter what we do here on earth. We're all one after we die. She felt like she expanded and was part of everything in the universe, rocks, plants, animals, other people. And her father had passed away 10 years earlier, or about 10 years earlier. I might get the timing a little bit wrong. And he met her on that side, and her best friend, who had passed away a few years earlier, met her on that side. They had a conversation, and essentially he told her, you have a choice. You can go back in your body, or you can stay here. You're supposed to go back, but you have free will, and the choice is yours. And she said, well, why would I go back into that body when it's riddled with cancer? And my last 4 years have been miserable at making everybody, my entire family, miserable. And then she said she had this immediate knowing that everything would be okay if she went back. So she went back, and she was, essentially all of the cancer was gone out of her body within 2 weeks. That the messages she brought back, we come from love and we return to love. All of those messages that we're not judged, that we're all one, that we were unified, took away that nagging doubt around the suicide. So I was ready then to plan it out, make sure everything was done in a way that no one would know what I was going to do, but say goodbye to my family in a way that they wouldn't know that that's what I was planning. But I had just coincidentally about a week before, and I say this information found me rather than me finding it, I came across this document, and I'll call it a blueprint document, that promised to liberate me from my thinking if I studied it and meditated and prayed on it and did the work. And so I thought, okay, being an engineer, I'm going to put the suicide aside because I can always do that. So I'll give this document a chance. And so I embarked on this journey, which I've documented in my book. I embarked on this journey, and a year later to the day, I woke up and I was full of love and peace and joy, and I had an entirely new outlook on life. I was happy to be alive. I understood why everybody does what they do, why everybody behaves the way they do. And I understood what I needed to do in order to ascend spiritually. And I've been on that journey now for 4 years.
Wow.
So it's 4-year anniversary today, or at the end of November of this year.
Happy anniversary. Okay. So first, I want to celebrate your life, that I'm glad that you're still here. And then I have just a clarifying question. This document that you talked about, what brought this to your mind? I mean, you had been writing the note, you were ready to move forward, and then well, wait, I'm gonna give this an experiment. I'm gonna give this a try. What took place in that shift? I feel like I'm missing a chapter.
Yeah, you are, because I think I cut it out a little bit there. But so in 2015 or so, I started to go back to these spiritual books and scientific books. I'm an engineer, so I like things that are tangible, measurable, observable, things that we can kind of quote unquote prove. And so I started to read these books, and I read a series of books around mind and memes, concepts of consciousness that I hadn't considered before. So Mind and Memes, this book discussed that, one of the key things that came out of this book was everything that we think is right or wrong, true or false, is really just a belief. It's our perception of the world. And after reading that book, I could say, okay, well, all these things that I think are right and wrong, or good or bad, or true or false, is really just a belief, not the truth. And so that kind of unsettled, not unsettled in a bad way, but unsettled me, shook me a little bit of my foundation to get away from this, I'm right and you're wrong, or vice versa. And so then I read a book that talked about, and it was a scientific book, again, all researched, all documented. It's a book that describes how our thinking and feeling influences and affects the expression of a cell. And expression of a cell is the work it does. So we either, through our thoughts and our emotions, make our cells healthy or make our cells unhealthy. And we attract these illnesses through us over time. It takes time to do this. We all have we have free will. And what we choose to think and what we choose to do will either make our life, better for us or not better for us. And so I read this book. So that was another one. And then I read some books on people that have brain trauma and neuroplasty and neuroscience. And again, medically documented about people that have brain traumas and how they could rewire essentially their brains to correct the issues that they had out of these brain traumas through this process of neuroplasty. And, science a long time ago thought, the brain was, kind of fixed and it died over time, but you can actually create new brain cells. Then I read this NDE experience. Now, in this time, I was looking for another book. I can't remember what it was called at the moment, but I was looking for this other book and I just happened to come across this blueprint document. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. And it would have been a document that I would have normally just pushed aside, run away from, never, because of the way it's marketed, so to speak, would have not been anything I would have been attracted to. But I was totally open. So all of these books that I had read got me to the state of being open and was essentially laying a foundation for me for this change. Then this document showed up. I read it about a week before I started reading it and looking at it. So I was in this mode of crafting this suicide note and at the same time thinking, I need to give this document a chance.
I'm glad you kept your mind open so that could be there. Now, it's interesting as I'm listening to you speak and you talk about how you've read all these different books and there are so many people who are saying different things. And there's also a lot of people who are saying the same thing. But when we speak, we use our voice and our experience. And those things that matter to you, like I want to be able to measure it. I want to be able to see it and feel it and touch it. I want that research behind it. There are going to be certain voices that will resonate with you and something that you can feel like, okay, I get this. And you talked about that near-death experience where this woman shared her experience and somehow that one was able to touch you. So that's why it's okay to have multiple stories that are telling the same thing, because we come from a different perspective and we use our own voice and our own experiences as we share. And so having this person tell their experience and this person tell their experience and this person share, this is what worked for me. And having this person say, well, this is what worked for me. I love that there's more than one right way to do things. And I love that there are different voices so that we can find what resonates with us, what makes sense to us, so that we can be able to understand and grow and develop. Now, you have added your voice to the mix as you have written your book and you've put your ideas together in a way that may speak specifically to people where someone else's may not. And that's a beautiful, interesting thing. So thank you for adding your voice. Would you be willing to share these? I know you have 7 steps that you walk through to help people be able to go from that place of darkness to that place of personal enlightenment, or you might use another word, maybe consciousness, where you're living maybe the same life. You might be in the same house. You might be in the same relationships. You might have the same job. You might have the same amount of money in your bank account. And yet it's completely different experiences. One, you feel miserable, hopeless, discouraged, depressed. And then you can be in those exact same physical circumstances and yet feel fulfilled and happy and joyful. And it's amazing because a lot of people think that our happiness comes from the outside in. Man, I'm going to be happy as soon as I get that raise. I am going to be happy and fulfilled when I get this awesome relationship. Or I'm going to be happy and fulfilled when I buy this car or buy this house or weigh this, certain amount, lose 20 pounds or whatever it may be. And the truth is, none of that matters. Actually, the change has to take place on the inside. So I would love to hear your take and your view on how to change that inside.
Yeah, no, that's great. At all these points you make, I agree with 100%. So life is really a journey within, and we let our externalities drive what we think and what we feel. And we are totally influenced by media, movies we watch, things we read, and the influences that we grew up under. So when a baby is born, it is typically, if it's been born into a right family, that has a means, it is the embodiment of joy. And it's this sponge that soaks up and, all of the things that it's exposed to, its parents' emotions, its parents' speaking and opinions and everything that it's exposed to. And as we grow from being a baby through to adulthood, we believe that we're becoming versed in the ways of the world. But really what we're doing is we are shutting our soul off from its direct connection to the divine or God or Allah or Yahweh, whatever you want to call it, the Tao, the source of our being. And we're doing that so that our soul, it comes in and it needs to learn certain things in this lifetime. So it's only through the lessons of suffering does the journeying soul gain self-knowledge to retain individuality after it has discarded the ego. The ego is a tool of creativity that is used to create. Your soul is a fragment of divine consciousness, and your ego is the manifested form of expression, and it can only do things that work through electromagnetism. This is all described in my book in terms of a consciousness plan, electricity, and in terms of bonding rejection of I attract all of the things that I like. I like ice cream. I like chocolate, milk. I like that car. I like that house. And for safety and security, push things away. I don't like that person. I don't like that experience. I don't like to live there. And you push away all these things. Those are the only mechanisms that your ego has to function in this world. And the journey within is to stop letting all of your externalities drive what you think and feel and how you behave in the world, and to dissolve all of the bondages that you've put around your ego, allow your ego to connect directly with the divine, and have the divine help you in cleansing your soul, cleansing your ego, and expressing love. We come from love. We return to love. We are here. We are here not to please God. We are here to express God. And God is love. And so when we talk about my book, very quickly, I've written my book this way. So part one is just an overview of what you're going to read and the circumstances that get you into it. My recommended approach to reading my book is read it from cover to cover, see if the processes and understand the process in its entirety, see if it makes sense for you. And if it does, then go back and start with step one or some of the scientific books that I talk about, and then follow the process. If it doesn't make sense to you or it's not ringing for you, then please just pass the book on to somebody else. You can never judge the inner reality of another person. So although the success of my book, we will typically measure it in sales, the real success of this book is the number of people that read it, that are exposed to this, and can make a decision for themselves whether this process works for them or not. So this gets back to people hearing messages in different ways.
Right. What resonates with them, and if it changes lives, to me, that is exactly a total success. You can't measure it because they're not probably going to come back to you. They may move forward, but still, you know that that's a possibility. and a probability. So, well,
Exactly. So the second part of the book is a memoir, and it's an illustration of how I created my every tomorrows, brought every experience and every circumstance into my life. And I use that only as an illustration for people so that after they go through the 7 steps, they can go back and perhaps look at their own lives and say, oh, here's a kind of a template, if you will, of how this person looked at their life. And so I can look at mine and see how I created my every tomorrows. The third part of the book is about science. So I go through some scientific learnings and I share things that I've read for people to bring everybody up to the same speed and everybody up to the same platform and lay this foundation for change. The fourth part of the book is I share this blueprint document. And you have to come to this document like a little child, open and joyous and full of wonder and without any prejudgment. And if you can do that and you can follow the process to go through this document, you can open yourself up to new vistas of being and new ways to look at the world. And you will understand the process of creation. You'll understand what was before the Big Bang, the impetus for the Big Bang, what happened after the Big Bang, and how the materialized form came into being, so that we have the opportunity as fragments of divine consciousness, our souls can learn the lessons it needs to learn.
Sorry, is this the same document that you read? Is it?
Yep.
Okay.
It is. And I've gathered all the material together. I've put it in a PDF. And after people have read my book and decided they wanted to embark on this process, I give this to them freely for them to read. And the last part of the book is really my experience as I traveled through these 7 steps. And so let's talk a little bit about the 7 steps.
Yes, please.
So the first one is really, as soon as you understand the science, it's really the sharing of this near-death experience. And I offer this, I suggest people read this book because this woman describes consciousness in a way which will stretch your imagination of what consciousness is. And she describes it in a very good way. Then I introduce people to this blueprint material, and this blueprint material itself will help to create that final bridge between spirituality and science. And it does this through its explanation of the things that I just talked about before the Big Bang, after the Big Bang, the impetus for the Big Bang, what happened after the Big Bang in the billions of years it took for materialized form come into being, for elements to be formed, for living molecules to be created, for cells to be created, and then the evolution of plant life and human life. And when you can understand all of these mechanisms and then how we use electromagnetism to create our every tomorrow in terms of our thinking and feeling, you think with electrical impulses in the brain, that is a consciousness plan, and you feel with magnetic impulses in your nervous system. This bonds and creates a form, and there's a life form that is around you in your aura, and you create hundreds of these every day. And as you think about and repeat these thinkings and emotions, you strengthen the magnification of these consciousness forms, and they will attract to you like experiences and events into your life. This is all described. So the second step is unveiling these truths for you to read on your own and make your own decision. The third step is to cleanse your consciousness. So we have things, there's a specific process and a specific kind of starting list, so to speak, that everybody needs to cleanse themselves up to dissolve these bondages that that bind down the soul. And you go through a process of doing some cleansing, and then you need to rebuild your consciousness with your golden aspirations of divine consciousness. So the things that are in alignment with our source of being.
Is that step 4? Or are we still on step 3?
Nope. Now we're on to step 4.
Okay.
Well, yeah. So first step is the NDE. Second step is unveiling the truths. Third step is actually writing a letter to yourself. This is a private letter for yourself that you write to yourself about how exactly you feel about life. Are you happy to be alive, or are you completely miserable? And this is a letter that's only for you, for your eyes only. You're not writing it to please God. You're not writing it to share with anybody. It's for you only. And you write this letter, and you have to be totally truthful and self-aware when you're writing this, and document it. Then you seal it and put it away. Step 4 is cleansing your consciousness. Step 5 is rebuilding your consciousness. Step 6 is you're going to learn how to meditate. And I learned how to meditate in the 90s, and I did all the various methods of meditating. Then I've tried it, and kind of on and off with meditation. And there's lots of reasons why people say you should meditate. It makes you calmer, and it's many, many reasons. This meditation that you're going to learn through this process is a meditation where you have to enter into complete silence and stillness and stop your mind from having thought. And people will say, well, some people might say that's impossible, but I can tell you it's not. It takes some practice. But when you enter into that silence and the stillness, you open yourself up to having a connection with the divine. And what happens over time is that you will build new brain cells at the top of your head underneath your skull, and a little opening will happen at the top of your head. And when it happened to me, I didn't recognize that was going on. It just felt a little bit weird. That opening now is, you could put a salad bowl over my head, and it's from the top of my ears around all of my head. And every time, I don't even have to meditate to feel this now. But it was when I meditated that I felt this. But now I feel it all the time. I have constant contact. And it is so beautiful. So I describe this in the book about how I experienced this, what it felt like, how it grew. And at one point, the spiritual energy flowing into me was so strong in the beginning that I thought I had damaged my brain. And then I thought, oh, this is nonsense. It's not, because it's so different. And the energy would come into my head. And then over time, it grew where it would go into the rest of my body, down to my feet, might go down one side, up the other side. And then it would come into my head and go into my chest, and then in my solar plexus. So your solar plexus is the seat of your emotions. Your heart obviously is in your chest, and your head is this entry point into spiritual inflow of energy. And when you have this connection with the divine, at some point, you will know that what you know is true. And when you know what you know is true, and you've followed this process, then your belief and your faith becomes unshakable. And at some point, as you continue on with this process, and this took a year for me, about 13 months, I had a meditation where I went into a state of meditation, and you go through varying levels of frequencies of consciousness. The higher your spiritual consciousness is at a very high level, and our human consciousness is at a very low vibrational level. And as you go through these different vibrational levels, you have greater and greater contact and understanding of what you're experiencing, and inflow into the divine. The divine is always radiating unconditional love, unstintingly, always. But your human consciousness prevents you from feeling it because it's at such a low level. So when you go through this process, you open yourself up. When 13 months after, I had this state where I went into the state of this meditation, and it's indescribable in human terms because we just don't have the language, but I was totally and completely bathed in love, unconditional love. And I didn't care what happened to my body. My body could be in pain, could be in misery. It didn't matter. I just wanted to stay in that state. And this is just a glimpse of the state that you return to. And when you have these experiences in meditation, you will start to know that what you know is true. Your faith becomes unshakable. And this is what transforms your life. Now, I no longer judge anybody. I don't judge anybody. I don't denigrate anybody. Everybody's soul is equal. I look at people now, and no matter what they're doing, whatever their ego is prompting them to do, I can see that their soul is a fragment of divine consciousness. We are unified after. They come from love. They are love. And it's just their ego mechanism that it is their path to the light. They need to do these things that they need to do to create circumstances in their life that will eventually, in this lifetime or another lifetime, wake them up and realize that this is what they're doing to themselves. And when that happens, then they begin their own process to do their own spiritual ascension.
Fantastic. I'm so glad that you were able to find something, again, that resonated for you, was successful for you to be able to make you grow from the place where you were to the place where you are. And that inner peace, which is beautiful, and that you can take it with you wherever you go. And I love the way that you look at other people, because if we look at other people as their divine, beautiful, potential, and not only their potential, but what they are right now, if everyone felt that way, we would have peace and there wouldn't be contention, there wouldn't be issues. It would be beautiful. And we can't force anyone else to do that. We can only invite, and then we can work on ourselves. So well done for what you have accomplished, and that you have been able to organize it in a manner that makes sense to you and will make sense to other people who think the way that you do. And that's fantastic. And thank you for visiting with me today and sharing your experiences.
Well, thank you so much, Linda. It's been a pleasure to be here today. And thank you for the opportunity to share my story.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. In closing, I'd like to share a quote by D. Neil Elliott. He said, "You choose your path, deliberately or by default. Today, I invite you to choose your path deliberately." Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of Linda's Corner, please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. I also invite you to check out my nonprofit, Hope for Healing, at the website hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free ebooks, free audiobooks, and other free resources to help increase happiness, build confidence and self-esteem, strengthen relationships, manage stress, and calm feelings of depression and anxiety. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, or Amazon bestseller, You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.